My husband and I purchased our home in July of 2015. It was a pre-sale, and from the contract portion to having the keys in our hands, it was about 5 to 6 months. We were dropping by a couple of times a week to check on the progress of the house. We met a few of the neighbors and familiarized ourselves with the area. Our house is the corner lot on a private road at the very end of the neighborhood. The entire neighborhood is a dead end, one way in, one way out. Prior to our house being there, it was a vacant lot, which means that people parked here. As we lived in the city and parking is regulated, it's dead quiet back there and nothing ever happens. I'm the type of person who's very observant. My husband likes to say I'm the 80-year-old get off my lawn type at the ripe old age of 28. I've never been good with names though. Like I said, parking is regulated, so people parking on the side of the house, which parallels to the main road, isn't uncommon. It's all 2-hour parking. At the time, my husband was working 12-hour shifts and was carpooling, so he was being picked up at around 4 in the morning. He had just left, and I had heard a vehicle pull up shortly after, and I thought maybe he had forgotten something. So I peeked out of the window, and I see a truck parked along the side of our house, facing the wrong direction. This wasn't his ride, and I had never seen this truck out here before. I figured maybe they were picking someone up for work, and left it at that. Over the next 45 minutes to an hour, they continued to sit there. Engine off, engine on, headlights off, headlights on. The truck was not in park, as I could see that their third brake light was on. It had also come and gone several times. If you're waiting for someone, why leave your engine on for an hour? Why drive back and forth? At this point, I was a little freaked out. It was approaching the time that I needed to leave for work, and I would have to drive right past this truck in order to leave the neighborhood. I didn't know what this person was doing, and I was afraid that maybe they were casing the houses in the neighborhood, ours specifically. I texted my husband, and he told me that it was weird, and if I was worried, I should just call 911. I didn't want to be dramatic, so I got ready and left. I left the living room light and the TV on, just in case. We have blinds over all of our windows, and there's no way to see in. As I leave, I see that the truck is no longer there. I'm relieved. As I'm almost at the end of the neighborhood, I see the truck in another driveway. Now I'm scared. What the fuck is this guy doing? As I drive past the truck, it turns around and heads back to our house. I thought, okay, if I'm gonna call, I at least need the license plate number. So I turn around and get what I thought was the make of the truck. It was a Mazda, and I thought it was a Ford, and license plate number, and peel out. I was so scared that I was physically shaking, and I stalled my car. As soon as I get out to the main road, I called 911 to report suspicious activity, gave the description, and said that I'd like to be contacted afterwards about the outcome. The police station is 2 streets down, so I knew it would be quick. About 15 minutes later, as I'm pulling into work, I get a phone call from a police officer. He asks if I know Mary. Nothing comes to mind. I'm bad with names to begin with, but I don't know a Mary. He asks if I'm familiar with the yellow house across the street. I say yes. He tells me that it's Mary's house, and the man in the truck is Mary's ex-boyfriend, and they've been broken up for 3 years. I believe I said, I'm sorry, but what the fuck is he doing there then? He was watching the house. He had been stalking her. She was not home at that time. The officer told him that his behavior was fucking creepy and not to ever show up again. The officer filed a report and patrolled the neighborhood for a few weeks. Even though I didn't know Mary and we had only exchanged waves in passing, it was creepy as hell, and she needed to know. I've never seen anyone so freaked out. Apparently, it was not a mutual breakup. He had obsessive and some dependency issues. She had blocked all communication, and this was the last straw in order for her to get a restraining order. For whatever reason, she wasn't granted one earlier. Because our house and street is newer, it doesn't always show on maps or GPS, so we have to give people turn-by-turn directions. When I mapped our house recently, sure enough, that truck is parked in front of Mary's house. So, Mary Stalker, let's not ever fucking meet. Don't let me catch you in my neighborhood. I worked at a store that was very close to my house, so I walked home every day. The map of the story is, there's my job, my friend's job, a traffic light, a small park, another traffic light, 3 abandoned stores, and finally, a gas station. The only busy part of this route is the gas station. One day, I was leaving work, and it was starting to get dark. When I left, there was an employee fixing the electrical box of the store that my friend works. I glanced at him, not thinking anything of it, and waved to my friend. She smiled through the glass door, and I continued on my way. It was just another normal day. When I was exactly in the middle of the park, I glanced over my shoulder because I'm an anxious woman, and I saw the electrician who I just saw walking behind me. Everything I'm going to tell you now happened very quickly. When I looked back again, his eyes were fixed on me, and he had no expression on his face. All the alarm bells were going off in my head, so I started walking at a faster pace, more out of paranoia than real fear. So I look again, this time more slowly, and I notice that his steps increased in speed, just like mine. His expression had also changed to anger and impatience, like a hunter frustrated because the little rabbit ran too fast. I think deep down, our survival instinct knows when someone wants to do something bad to us, just by looking at them. I hadn't actually started running yet, but the park, which was actually small, suddenly got much bigger. I don't know if when I looked back a third time, if my fearful expression gave me away, but instead of walking, he began to almost run and walk at the same time, his strides becoming so long that it was awkward to look at. And so I ran. I'd seen this 1,000 times on the news. The park was empty. It was just me and him. I knew what he wanted to do. I had my phone in my hand, but the adrenaline was telling me to keep running and running. I ran the light and crossed the street, still not daring to look back. Maybe he was right behind me. I thought after arriving at the abandoned stores, he would have given up. So I looked back one last time, and there he was. Still not running, just walking super fast in a weird way. The adrenaline made me run even faster. And then when I looked up again, after a while, he had suddenly stopped. The guy just stood there, his angry expression also fading away. His face looked blank. It was like he was staring into nothing, but his eyes were still fixed on me. At this point, I was already approaching the gas station, and he was just a small silhouette that didn't move. My heart was still racing, and my hand was shaking so badly I could barely type the password into my cell phone. I kept walking and looking back every second. He didn't move an inch. I started to get paranoid, thinking that maybe he really was an employee, that maybe I was imagining things, that he wasn't really following me. It's like our brains start to justify the situation so that you stop suffering. When I was already at the end of the gas station and the adrenaline was slowly decreasing, my boss called me and asked if I had arrived home yet. I said no. He said that my friend next door was worried about me because there was a crazy man pretending he had tools in his hand and pretending he was fixing the power box. She was too scared to tell him to stop and just watched his weird mimicking for a while. But when I passed by, he turned and followed me, as if he was literally waiting for me. My friend was so scared that she tried to record the man in case something happened and was ready to call the police. After that episode, I changed the route I did for work and even started to use a bike. Guys, Don't forget to always stay alert of your surroundings. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't realized quickly enough that he was following me. He would have reached me in seconds. This happened about a decade ago. At the time, I was living with my mom in a pretty quiet town. The house we lived in had adjoining houses on either side of it. The back gardens of our neighboring houses adjoined our back garden, but there were fences fully separating each garden. There was no public access to any of the gardens, as they all had high fences. It was winter, and I had the house to myself, as my mom was out of town. Things had been fairly quiet and uneventful. This was a town where nothing really happened. I came home late this particular evening, as I'd gone to the gym after work. I went inside, put my gym bag down, and started walking upstairs. It was dark, but I noticed a light coming from upstairs. There was a kind of mini wall on our top floor. As I got past it, I saw the light was coming from my mom's room. I was puzzled at first. I had no reason to go into my mom's room, and no lights were on in the house when I left for work that morning. Furthermore, my mom wasn't due back for a couple of weeks, and there was no way she would have come back that early. As I got past the mini wall, I saw that my mom's door was wide open, and her room had been ransacked, with her belongings all over the floor. That's when I realized my house had been broken into. I had never experienced anything like this before. I couldn't think clearly, and I had no idea if anyone was still in the house. I quickly went downstairs, got out of the house, and locked the door behind me. Looking back, I think I was in a state of shock. I wasn't sure what to do next. For some reason, I called my cousin, even though he lived very far away, and there was no way he'd be able to come around. I told him what had happened, and he told me I should call the police. I asked him if he was sure, and he said yes. I called the police. I explained that my house had been broken into, and that I didn't know if anyone was still in there. 2 police officers, a man and a woman, arrived very quickly and proceeded to search my house while I waited outside. After a little while, they came back outside, and the lady officer told me they hadn't found anyone. We went inside, and they asked me if anything was missing. I had a look around, but the TV, DVD player, computer, and stereo were all still there. It looked like the burglar, or burglars, had gone straight to my mom's room. It turns out that whoever broke in somehow came through the back garden. We had a sliding metal and glass patio door at the back of the house, and the glass in it had been completely smashed. The police officers called for a CSI person to come and have a look at the crime scene. They also called for someone to come and board up the patio door. The CSI person found a footprint at the back garden and some fingerprints on the remaining glass. It was the early hours of the morning by the time everything had been sorted out. I had work later in the day, so I tried getting some sleep. However, I couldn't, as I was jolted awake each time I heard the floorboards creak. Years after it happened, my mom told me some of her jewelry had been stolen. Ultimately, they never caught the person or persons responsible. Hi friends, I hope you're staying safe. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me. Thank you for listening. Sweet dreams.